Okay, how are you guys doing today? Good. Happy Friday. And almost the weekend. Just be careful this weekend if you're going to any Super Bowl party. Hopefully it's a small gathering, not a big gathering. Just be safe. I don't know. Does anyone even like Tom Brady at this point anymore? I don't know. All I know is everyone that I talk to around here hated New England, back when he played for New England. So, but I hope you guys, if you do watch the game with a group that's small, and just be safe. We've already had, the numbers are already up. People with COVID. I've already had 3 students email me saying that they have it. So that number is going up, unfortunately. So we have to be careful and make sure that we don't shut down for the semester again. So let's go first through just a few items here that I wanted everyone to just be aware of. So for Monday, we are coming back to this book, Tightrope, and we're going to be reading chapter 3, okay, for Monday. Now, it's just 1 chapter this time. It's not 2, like the last time. So if you do the reading response, obviously it's just 2 points from chapter 3, okay? And then talk about why they're important, ask a question at the end. You don't get full points unless you answer the question. So make sure you have the question there at the end, okay? So come prepared to discuss that on Monday. And then Tuesday is a rest day. So nobody has classes Tuesday. I'm not going to assign anything on Tuesday. So just remember that. We don't, of course, meet on Tuesday, but, for other references for your other classes. Okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to mainly look at music as a component of culture, but we're going to finish looking at norms and sanctions and language, which we didn't finish last time. Okay, so I'll close that out. Today, when we get to the music part, I'm going to be showing quite a few and its role in society. But this is sort of what we talked about last time. I just wanted to lay it out there clearly for you guys. Right? You guys were pretty good with when I asked the question, where does new language come from? Where do these new phrases, these new meanings come from? And you mentioned quite a few of these, right? Especially media, cultural practices of young people. But let's just talk about a couple more quickly. New scientific findings. Obviously, if you have new findings, that's new information, and there's new words connected to that new information, right? Immigration, of course, a melding of languages, whether it's Spanish and English, or Hindi and Malayali, or French and German, right? There's always a few words that have become kind of fused together. Although, and we're going to talk more about this, the English language has been remarkably durable in the United States, okay? The United States is the largest graveyard of languages in the world. Languages basically come to the U.S. to die. And it's because assimilation is so powerful in this country. We have a very strong assimilation tendencies that newcomers assimilate to the mainstream society over time. And when we talk more about immigration, I'm going to mention this again, that by the 2nd generation, so the children of the immigrants themselves, they know English better than their home tongue, okay, better than the language that their parents have. So we're going to talk more about that, so I won't go into that too much, okay? And obviously these interrelate, right? New technology is related to media is related to this, and this is related to that, and scientific discoveries are related to that. So they're all sort of intertwined too, right? Okay? So I won't say anything more about that, because we looked at that last time. One thing I was going to say too, before we move on. You can always tell what a culture finds important, because they always have multiple terms for the same thing. they have multiple words for the same object or experience. So in our society, what do we have a lot of names for? And it's the same thing, but they have like many names describing the same thing. Many words, I should say. What's an example of that? Let me help you out to get you thinking. So the Inuit culture in Alaska, they have like 30 different terms for snow, because snow is so obviously central in their culture. All snow surrounds them most of the year. What about in our sort of mainstream culture here? What do we have a lot of words for? Oh, not sure what you mean exactly. Oh, okay, yeah, good, yeah, okay, yeah, some stuff like that. Yeah, what's another thing that we have a lot of names for? A lot of words for? Don't we have a lot of terms for money, right? Don't we have a lot of terms for sex, right? Is it just because it's a Friday? Okay, so this is what I'm trying to get at. We have a lot of terms for the things that we consider important. Okay? Okay, let's go on then. Let's talk about some new concepts here, some new vocabulary words. So we all abide by norms. Okay? Every society, every culture has its set of norms. These are the rules and expectations, guidelines that we live by. Okay? Most people are conformists. Most people follow the rules, follow the norms, because they don't want to stand out. Okay? They don't want to be stigmatized. They don't want to be criticized. They don't want sanctions, or at least a negative sanction. Right? So a sanction is a reward or punishment. Okay? A negative sanction would be, say you break a social norm. What would be one of the social norms in a classroom? Like a pattern expectation, or you expect it to be in a classroom. What would happen if, what would be like breaking a classroom norm? What would that look like? Yeah, good. Like sleeping in class, talking on the phone in class, something like that, right? And if you break a norm in the classroom, you would receive a negative sanction from me, right? Or even from a classmate. Say you were on the phone and you were making a lot of noise, the classmates around you would probably give you a dirty look, right? And then I would give you a dirty look. I would tell you to either stop it or get out of the classroom, right? If you're talking on the phone in the middle of class. So this is across the board. That was just the example of a classroom, right? So most people abide by social norms and conform to social norms because they don't want to appear weird. They don't want to be set apart in any way, or they don't want to draw a lot of attention to themselves, right? So most people, yes, they don't engage in quote unquote bad things because they might get arrested. What sociologists would say is most people conform to the society's norms because they don't want negative reaction from the people around them. Right? They don't want a negative sanction from the people around them. So an informal sanction would be like me just glaring at you for talking on the phone or kicking you out of the classroom. A formal sanction would be you get expelled, like you get a 0, or you get arrested. Okay? So like texting and driving is illegal in many states now, and that would be like a formal sanction. You actually get a ticket for it, right? So let's talk about some examples of different norms. We have different types of norms, right? Norms for everyday interaction are called folkways. Okay? So some examples of a folkway, right? Shaking hands when you greet someone, that's a folkway, right? Having eye contact when you're talking to someone is a folkway. We kind of think it'd be weird, if when I'm trying to talk to you all, but my face is turned to the board, right? An example of breaking a folk way. What might be an example of breaking a folk way, right? How about not mowing your lawn, right? And letting your grass get about this tall. So if your neighbor hadn't mowed his lawn in like 2 months, what would you probably do? And like maybe what would you kind of say? You probably wouldn't be really angry though, right? Because most people don't like confrontation. What I've noticed is when this happens, people will be like, they'll go next door and be like, oh, have you been sick? Like, have you been sick? And they're trying to, get out that, you must be sick. You must, because otherwise, why would you leave your grass to grow this high, right? So a formal sanction would be you call the city on them and they get fined. But most neighbors, at least nice neighbors, won't do that right away. They'll try to talk to the neighbor first, right? So that would be an example of breaking a social norm, not mowing your lawn. But that's very relative, right? Because in other societies, they don't even have lawns. Okay, lawns are sort of an American invention. Okay, so another example of maybe breaking the folk way would be cutting in line, right? Cutting in line at a movie theater or at an amusement park, or cutting somebody off in traffic. And again, traffic is a little bit different because you're protected. But most people really won't cut in line, right? Because they don't want a negative reaction from the people around them. They don't want to be cussed out. They don't want to be yelled at, right? So those are things like folkways. So folkways are these like routine, casual norms, okay? And then we have taboos. Taboos are more universal. They're across societies, okay? Because in the United States, my whole thing about mowing your lawn, that doesn't really apply to other countries. There's nothing intrinsically bad, right? There's nothing intrinsically bad about like letting your grass grow high. We just think it looks, bad. But other places would be, no, that's natural, that's pretty, to have your grass growing tall around your house, right? But taboos are norms that are sort of universally applied. So what might be the most serious, what's a behavior that's condemned everywhere, do you think? What's an example of that? Pardon? Oh, I think that's more of a folk way. I think that's probably more of a folk way. But that's fine though. Something that every society condemns. What's something that almost pretty much every society condemns? Okay, yeah. Most societies have laws against like robbery, stealing. But think about really like extreme stuff that's condemned. What's the most like extreme crime usually? Yeah, good. So homicide, murder, pretty much universally condemned. Although there's exceptions to that, right? So in the United States, what's an exception to that if you kill somebody? Yeah, good, self-defense. And then there's not always sanctions against murder either, right? Because a government might murder its own citizens, right? And because they're the government, they're not really they make the rules. And a lot of violence is state-sanctioned violence, okay? Or during wartime, right? During wartime, it is fine to kill, especially a combatant. Maybe not a civilian. That's usually condemned. But in wartime, the purpose, killing becomes a good thing, right? You kill your enemy. So even with taboos, there's a little bit of cultural context. Right? Okay, let's go on. Probably the most serious taboo would be cannibalism, right? Eating a member of your own race. of your own species. That's probably the greatest taboo, even more so than murder, as there's all these built-in exceptions to murder.
Okay, let's go on.
I'm just going to turn this down a little bit. Okay. Of course, norms vary by gender, right? Norm, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the sex and gender unit. So ways of talking vary by gender, ways of dressing, obviously, ways of walking. Look at these two young women here walking together, kind of arm to arm, right? That's probably not too uncommon to see two women doing that. But if two men were doing that, what would the people around them think? What would they assume? Yeah, that they're together, that they're a couple. But women, typically, in our mainstream culture, are given a little bit more latitude and can be a little more intimate with each other without it being sexualized. But in our culture, especially in the United States, any type of intimacy between two men is always sexualized, right? So we have different set of standards for men and women as regards intimacy, right? So one example of this is my brother-in-law is from India, and they live in New York City. And we went to the International Car Show a couple of years ago there, and we're walking in Manhattan, and he's walking like this with his arm around me, like this. And normally, normally two guys will not do that unless they're together. But in Manhattan, it doesn't, like, anything goes. So we didn't get stares or anything. But you get stares in Fayetteville if you're holding hands with another guy or your arm is around another guy. You'll get stares. And maybe worse, maybe shouts. But in Manhattan, he felt comfortable doing that. But obviously, that's just a friendly gesture, right? It's not a sexual thing. And in other cultures, men who are friends, they hold hands when they're in public. It's not an uncommon thing to do, to hold hands with your male friend in a lot of parts of Asia. Okay? So, regarding talking, let me just give you one example of this now. So my mom, she'll always be like, oh, I had lunch with my girlfriend on Saturday. So who is she referring to? Yeah, just a female friend. Right? My dad does not say, oh, I had lunch with my boyfriend. That would be kind of funny, right? So we have these different standards. Okay. And we just make them up. Societies just make these things up, right? Okay. So what is something, oops, I want to go backwards. What is like a new social norm or social behavior that really annoys you, that you wish would go away? Just something that annoys you. There's nothing that annoys you. Yeah.
Girls in their body hair.
Like
some
so,
girls
what do you
would
mean?
be like, oh, I look like a man with my legs, but then it's like a social norm.
Oh, okay, yes, okay, yep. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Yep. That's completely social. That women are supposed to shave their legs. Yep. So just anything that's silly or something that annoys you, or something that's kind of newish that annoys you that you kind of wish would go away.
When you go to pass somebody on a 2-lane road when they're going like really, really slow, and when you get right beside them going to pass them, they speed up.
Okay, yeah, that often happens. Yep. Anything else? Something that bugs you? Something that people do in public that really bugs you, that's becoming more common? Yeah,
when
yeah.
they're not wearing their masks the right way.
Oh, yeah, that very much so. For some people, yeah, that could be annoying. Mhm. Oh, I thought you guys had a lot to say about this. Maybe nothing annoys you guys. So I'm very annoyed when people are talking to somebody else and they have on speakerphone. I don't know. Does not that you guys don't are not bothered by that?
I kind of just tune it out.
Maybe you're better. I can't. It's hard for me to tune out noise. But and maybe it's not really. I don't know. Maybe we're not really around anybody nowadays anyway. So maybe you're having a hard time with it for that reason. But especially when I lived in New York, you're on the subway in a subway car with 60 other people, and one or two people are talking, and you hear their entire conversation, and I just find that so annoying. So okay, well, I I thought you guys would have a lot to say there. So okay, let's go to the next thing then. So another term that is important to talk about is what's called a subculture. Okay, a subgroup or a subculture it's any cultural group or cultural pattern that is set apart from the mainstream in some ways. Okay, a cultural group or a cultural pattern that in some ways is set apart from mainstream society. Okay. Might be some examples of a subculture in the United States, a subgroup or a subculture? Oh boy, you guys are really having a rough time today. Come on, let's interact a little bit. I don't want you guys to be zombies. What's what's a group? What's a smaller group that's sort of set apart in some way in the U.S. that doesn't really follow all the mainstream norms? Yeah,
Native
thanks.
Americans.
Yeah, good. Yeah, some ethnic or religious or racial minorities. Yep, yep. Good. Any other groups?
The Amish.
Yeah, very good. I was hoping someone would say that. Yeah, the Amish, absolutely. Right? They reject a lot of modern forms of technology. They don't reject all technology. They reject the technology that they believe will harm their community, will harm their communitarian values. Okay? So they have some new technology that they adopt because they really think that it won't harm the communal nature of their culture and their society. There's a lot of subcultures. So, even like the surfers, the surfing subculture, now cannabis or marijuana is becoming more mainstream, but you still have a lot of areas more like cannabis cultures, cannabis subcultures. Let me give you some examples then. So, the gay and lesbian community for a long time has been a subculture. Now, this is fading somewhat as gay and lesbian people are become more accepted into mainstream society. Okay, so this has changed quite a bit in the last 20 years. And then some of these institutions that have faded. But when gay people were rejected by mainstream society and mainstream institutions, they started their own institutions. So there's no such thing as a straight bar, right? That would be stupid. There's no such thing as a straight bar. It's just a bar. Because straight people never had to develop their own institutions where they felt safe and protected and where they could be themselves, where they wouldn't have to worry about judgment, right? And so the gay and lesbian community set up their own bars, their own restaurants, their own pubs, so that they could express themselves without fearing for their lives and fearing negative stigmas and sanctions. They set up their own bookstores that would have gay affirming materials, and even their own churches. So, like the Metropolitan Community Church is actually a gay church, as most churches until very recently have rejected gay people. So they set up their own institution. I mean, it's the same with the black community. That's why they had, their own black institutions, because they were prohibited from mainstream white institutions. So they set up their own universities, their own media, like magazines, books, again, book publishers, and of course churches too. So we're going to talk more about those institutions. Basically, a subculture is a culture that, again, is set apart in some way from the larger society. This might feel strange to you, but it isn't. So beginning in the 1970s, you really saw a rise of what we call evangelical or fundamentalist Christianity. By the late 70s, and it was to start fairly small, but now it's grown. These people in that community believed that mainstream society was becoming too secular, is becoming too non-religious. And so they set up their own institutions, okay? So fundamentalist Christians starting in the 1970s, they started, for instance, their own radio stations. They never used to be Christian radio stations, but now there's Christian radio stations everywhere on the dial, in AM and FM. They set up their own music genre of contemporary Christian music, right? And Amy Grant was the first very popular contemporary Christian pop music artist, okay? They set up their own colleges. So has anyone heard of Liberty University? Yeah. So Liberty University was started by Jerry Falwell, and his son just ran it, had been running it until he resigned a few months ago. They believed that the American Academy was too liberal. And even Christian colleges like Methodist, or colleges that were affiliated with a religious denomination, were too non-Christian. Okay? So they set up their own very more conservative, fundamentalist, or evangelical universities. Okay? And then these items that I have down here, publishing empires too. Okay? So Brio is sort of the fundamentalist Christian counterpart to the Cosmo. Okay? And CCM, sort of like the evangelical Christian alternative to Rolling Stone. Okay? And World is the evangelical or fundamentalist alternative to like Time or Newsweek. Okay? Okay. So questions there at all about subculture? Okay. Oftentimes, of course, the subculture becomes mainstream. And that's what we'll talk about today and on Monday too. But let's talk about music for a while. And music is, again, a central aspect of all cultures. Why do you think music is so special to people? Why do you think people love music? What does music do for people? Why do you think music is so special to people? Yeah, good. It relaxes people. It makes them feel good. Yeah. What else? What else is maybe why people really love music? Yeah.
It's a community.
Yeah. Yep.
If you like a certain genre and you go to their concerts, like a community.
Yeah, good. There can be a community component attached to it. Other fans. Any other reasons for why people really love music, especially their favorite artists? What they love music? I think those two things are the main things. I think it is a form of like therapy. It makes people happy. It maybe connects people to their emotions in some ways. When you listen to, especially your favorite songs, right? Don't you sort of like zone out in a way, and zone out in a good way. most people don't really live in the present too much. They're always thinking about, oh my God, what am I going to do 2 hours from now? What am I going to do tonight? What do I have to do for tomorrow? We're never really present. But music, especially the music that we love, kind of grounds us. And we're living in the moment more. We're fully present. And I think that opens up more of a spiritual connection, not religious, but spiritual, meaning it kind of helps us center ourselves and just provide calm, right? And so many cultures who are authoritarian, they've actually banned music. Okay? So in many totalitarian and authoritarian societies and regimes, music is often banned. Okay? So this is especially notable in Afghanistan. When the Taliban were ruling Afghanistan, all music was banned except for chants to the scriptures, okay, to the holy scriptures. You could chant the scriptures, but that was it, okay? And in Puritan New England, so the Puritans also banned. The Puritans were a fundamentalist Christian sect, okay? And they were very authoritarian. They're sort of the American Taliban. They really are. They were the American Taliban. Very fundamentalistic. Okay? And they banned music too, except for the only thing you could do is you could sing the Psalms. You could sing the Psalms, but that was it. And authoritarians don't like music. Authoritarian leaders and dictators, they don't like music because music is about self-expression. Music can be counter-authoritarian. It can be counter-cultural. Anything that doesn't like worship or anything that doesn't directly have you have awe for the leader, they don't like that. Okay? So because music is really spiritual in the sense that it connects you to your heart in a lot of ways, authoritarian people do not like that. Okay? They want your attention being towards the regime and to the rules of the regime. Okay? So I'm going to show you a clip here. We're just going to watch a short video. And I don't know if anyone has seen this series. It's pretty good. It's on Netflix. This episode, I got to close this out, I guess. Fran Lebowitz is the one who is doing this series. She is a writer, author, and a cultural critic. And I'm just going to play a little clip of her talking about music. Okay? And I'm going to turn this off real quick. I was recording my lecture. Okay, I better leave that because I don't want to not save it. I'll just figure that out later. There we go.
Okay, I mean, but I'm very delighted. This is the only way.
So she's talking about music here, okay, and why it's important to people.
Nothing to read for, by the way. So, you know,
an artist, if he is truly an artist, is only interested in one thing, is to wake up the minds of men, to have mankind and womankind realize that there is something greater than what we see on the surface. So that is always reflected in a true artist's music or his works, his paintings. Won't you make into heaven? Hey. Oh, baby. Won't you make it? Woo! Did you hear me? Okay, we're going to the top right now. Going to the top. Top. This is the bam. Then we'll probably do four of these. I like it. Now.
understand how many things are made. Not that I can do it, but I know how you make a painting, you make a drawing, you make, but I don't know how you write a song.
All right, y'all, play for me one time.
Song, I know how you write lyrics to a song, but I don't know how you write a piece of music. And I realize sometimes I have seen films of like huge concerts of very popular musicians, and now they have all these cameras that go over there. You can see the faces of the people, and I'm always, when I see this, I'm very interested in the audience, and I see this, and you see how happy and grateful the people are for this music, especially popular music of their youth. It doesn't matter, whether the popular music of their youth was Frank Sinatra or Billy Joel or David Bowie, or Q-Tip. This is, don't you remember when we went on our first date? This was the music, don't you remember? This is centrally important to people. And they love the person who gave this to them. And the whole thing is a mystery to them. No one is loved like musicians. No arts. Musicians are loved by people. Really loved because they give them the ability to express their emotions and their memories. There's no other form that does that. I mean, I really think that probably musicians and cooks are responsible for the most pleasure in human life. And so that, Motown music, which was very popular when I was a teenager, whenever I hear it, I instantly become happier. There's just no question that it makes me happier. Now, this is true of almost nothing. Okay? Now, do I think like Motown is the greatest music ever made? I don't. But if you ask me, the second you hear this, do you feel happier? I do. Okay? That's a very important thing to do for human beings. I mean, music makes people happier, and it doesn't harm them. Most things that make you feel better are harmful. So it's very unusual. It's like a drug that doesn't kill you. There is a lot to be said for being in physical contact.
Okay, so I want to show that clip. I think she is very articulate in explaining why music is such a central part of culture in every society. I don't think we're going to get a chance to watch the other one, but maybe. So we'll go on though. Okay. So I know this is 2 years old. It's fine, probably. So what do you think is, what's really the most popular music genre in the United States today? What would you say?
Pop and rap.
Yeah, and then what is really considered, what's probably the most popular form of pop music? What would you say? What's usually always kind of in the top 10 number one songs or number one genres? What is subgenre? Isn't it hip hop? Right. So let's take a look at some of the most popular genres in 2018. So hip hop or rap was number one, followed by pop, of course. What is what's an example of a non-hip hop pop artist? Like who's a very popular pop artist that doesn't do hip hop, rap? Do you guys just don't want to talk today? I'm struggling here.
Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, kind of like Ed Sheeran. Like who else? Who else is kind of like not very popular, but not they don't do hip hop, they don't do rap.
Lady Gaga.
Yeah, good. Like Lady Gaga, Ed Sheeran, maybe what's that guy? I can't think of anything either. But Taylor Swift, right? Kind of like very mainstream. That doesn't really, it doesn't really bother you, right? If you don't really like it, it's just kind of smooth mainstream, right? And then so after that would be rock, R&B, Latin, country, and then of course all the way down religious, movie, stage and screen. That would be like movie, not documentaries, the soundtracks to movies, the soundtracks to Broadway, right? Electronic dance music is not that popular in the United States. It's more popular in Europe, and it's largely because people speak a lot of different languages in Europe, but you don't need. But electronic dance music is just, there's no vocals, right? So it's more popular in Europe. But what's really happening are these. Do you think all of these genres are getting more mixed together every year? Yeah, yeah. I think some of these are sort of artificial categories right now. Like Post Malone was the first artist who ever won Song of the Year for a rap song and Song of the Year for adult contemporary. And no other musician had ever done that. So I think he won Adult Contemporary Musician of the Year for the record Circles. And then the same year he also had a rap song that won an award. So these are really kind of blending together, right? Billie Eilish, she sings probably in a lot of different genres, right? So even country singers, are starting to like rap and do more hip hop style, right? So it's kind of blending together. It's becoming more fused. So let's take a look at music consumption trends, though, right? This is probably not a surprise to you. Most people get their music from streaming services, right? I mean, do any of you even own a CD? Oh, you still do? Okay. I thought most people your age probably don't even have CDs anymore. I still have a huge collection of CDs, but that was mainly, that was the main thing in the 90s and the first decade of the 2000s with CDs. Streaming didn't really get that popular until about maybe 10 years ago. But I started listening to music on cassette tapes. And the thing back then, in the late 80s, was the Sony Walkman was like the cool thing to have. So, but of course, well, no, actually, I should say I started listening on records, record player. And records are coming back, vinyl is coming back. But this has an impact on our society, right? The artists and the labels make a lot less money than they used to. Producers, the industry made much higher profits before streaming services. They make a lot less money from that now. And then, you used to have wonderful music stores in like downtown neighborhoods and shopping districts. I remember when I lived in Chicago after college, and I didn't know anybody, so I spent a lot of time at the Virgin Records, huge like multi-story building store in downtown Chicago, and it doesn't exist anymore. The same with bookstores because everything is online. So all these consumption patterns, they really even affect our physical communities, right? We lost bookstores, a lot of physical bookstores. We lost a lot of physical music stores. So that all even changes our local community's landscape. So this is what I was saying earlier. A lot of times, a subculture develops this musical genre or other cultural practice, and it becomes very popular. The mainstream dominant culture adopts it, and it becomes part of the mainstream. And then, of course, we're going to talk about music here. But again, one of the reasons that music is so important and vital to people is that it does, and especially good music, especially music that's sort of timeless, it reflects the moods and sensibilities of that particular culture. Okay? So country music is a great example of that. Country music started out very, very differently than the country music today that is more like pop, really. Country music is largely an outgrowth of what is called Americana and folk and bluegrass, and then it sort of melds with Western music. Western music was like the cowboy music in Texas and Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. All that is sort of fused. So Western sort of fused with Americana, fused with folk, fused with bluegrass. But that stuff is, a lot of that is derived from Celtic music or Irish music, because it was the Irish immigrants, Irish Celts and Scotch Irish, that settled West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and that's where bluegrass started. So bluegrass really reflects a lot of the old Celtic and Irish tunes, okay? And I think that a lot of the reason that's become such a popular genre because Irish Celtic music just has so much feeling and emotion to it because Ireland, for most of its existence, is extremely poor. I mean, it was a colony of the British, and the people lived very devastating lives. And the people used music to relieve their suffering, right? And so Irish music, if you listen to it, it's very emotional. People talk about their dreams. They talk about death. They talk about their pain, their suffering, their hopes, and then all of that, gets into the music. And then bluegrass, it came about from that type of Celtic music. Country music too, people don't realize, is that there were a lot of black country music artists, but we've lost that history. We tend to think of country music as like very white, right? And if you go to a country music concert, it's going to be all these white people, right? It's not going to be a very diverse crowd. But in fact, there are a lot of black country music artists that have just been forgotten of our history. Because up until 1950, the majority of black people lived in the country. Until the 50s, when black people started moving to cities, they were mainly rural. And we forget that history. We forget the black country artists. But country, again, just like other popular forms of music, has changed a lot. Do you know who really popularized country music? She's still very popular today. Yeah. Yeah, Dolly Parton really heavily popularized country music, as did Alabama, Brooks and Dunn, and then, of course, Garth Brooks, of course. Yeah. So the 90s was when country music really got extremely, extremely popular when that started being the best-selling genre.
What about like in the 60s and so with Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard?
Yeah, there's very small sales. They actually didn't sell a lot of records. Cash has become more popular, but at the time they didn't really sell too many records. Country they were in like the hundreds of thousands, whereas like rock artists were in the millions of record sales. So yeah, country really didn't get popular until the 80s with Dolly Parton, Alabama, with Reba McEntire, and then really popular in the 1990s with like Shania Twain, Garth Brooks and such. Okay, so we're out of time. We didn't get quite as far as the last class, but that's good. That's fine. On Monday, just come prepared to discuss the reading, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about music, and then I have at least one more video that I'm going to show you, a video clip about music. Just sign in, okay? Please, for your attendance. Okay. Thanks, everybody.